few days ago, Andrej Kaparthy was asked to give a talk at Y Combinator where he talked about AI, but most importantly, about how software is changing again. So I did watch the entire video, and in this particular video, I'm going to show you or talk to you about the main points that he touches on when it comes to software engineering and AI. By the way, if you don't know who Kaparthy is, Andrej Kaparthy, he is the genius who started Vibecoding the beginning of this year. So he's very smart. So I don't think we should listen to him. But before we go into that, I want to let you know that also in this video, I'm going to show you how to think about AI, how to think about software engineering in the era of vibe coding, so that you understand exactly how to leverage different tools such as N8N as a backend and then use vibe coding to build awesome applications, because that is actually what's missing when it comes to build deployable applications. So let's get started first by analyzing main points I got from Andrej Kaparthy. So the first thing he starts talking about is that how software is changing again. The idea is that software has been changing for a long time. And when he talks about software, he's talking about software engineering, the building of software. So in the beginning, that's what he starts introducing, the evolution of software. And this is the part that I found very interesting. So in 2017, he actually wrote an article where he talks about software 2.0. So the idea here is that software 1.0 is code, which means you have to understand how to code, you learn coding skills, and that's how software is built. But then software 2.0, this is when he predicted that then it's going to be equal to weights. So instead of using code, we're going to be using weights. What is that? So what does that really mean? It means that now software 2.0, the creation of software, is going to be aided by using neural networks, large language models. The code is going to be now the weights, the knobs that are used in a neural network to be able to spit out code, which is exactly what we're seeing nowadays. Goes on and talks about the example here. This is one of my favorite because it shows exactly what the software 1.0 means. You can see its code. Actually, if I go to his presentation, which I downloaded to show you here, this is not my presentation. This is what he's talking about. You can see here we have code and we have the weight. So same thing I was showing you earlier. So this is the slide that he was showing here, and you can see that first we have software 1.0, which implies that we have to learn to code. So it's code, code, and code. But then the evolution goes to software 2.0. So essentially what you do, you are training, you using pieces of data, such as 10,000 positive examples of a certain corpus, right? And 10,000 negative examples. So this is part of encoding. So the idea, you get all these pieces of data, which we then train using binary classifier to classify all of these pieces. And then we get those parameters adjusted and everything. And then we go to software 3.0. Now you can see the difference here. The difference is that now you have more of an English language. This is the prompt. This is what we use to prompt or to ground a large language model. So you can say you are a sentiment classifier for every review that appears between the tags, and you put the tags and you go from there. So the difference here is that we go from software 1.0, which is code, we go to software 2.0, which is we're able to use different samples from a corpus of a document of some sort, and then we train using a binary classifier, and then we get those parameters, right? And now on the software 3.0, we have just plain English. So that is the progression that he's talking about software. And then he talks about large language models being almost like operating system, how they were in the 60s, the beginning essentially of software, or rather of operating systems. Now, this concept of software as an operating system has been talked about as a more futuristic reality, but I think we're getting real close. What does that mean? We can look at large language models actually being like operating system. So if you look at an operating system, the operating system will have the hardware at the bottom and then has software. And of course, at bottom, it has the kernel, which are the pieces that allow for the operating system to actually work. And so the idea here is that large language models, we could have operating systems that are based on large language models. And he had this very nice diagram that depicts exactly that. So you can see usually in software 1.0 classical computer, we have what happened: calculator, Python interpreter, terminal, and all of these things. And then we have the disk, so we have file system plus embeddings, all that stuff. So translating all of that, at the top we have what we call peripheral devices. So this is the way that the operating system is able to get information in from the user, audio, back and forth, or video. And so the CPU, central processing unit, in this case here, we could have a large language model governing everything. For RAM, random access memory, we will be having context window. Remember, context window is the amount of tokens that a large language model is able to digest a certain period of time. So that is exactly what he's talking about here. And of course, the interfacing with the browser and other large language models. So the idea is that we are going to be able, or already we're getting there, where we have large language models as the basis of an operating system. Right, so at some point it goes into looking at anatomy of Cursor. Cursor is an AI agent or tool that allows you to build applications, right, without having to code. So essentially you prompt it and you build apps. Now the curious idea here is that you can see that if you were to open up Cursor, you will see that you have the code side of things, traditional interface, where we have the code, the files, and all of stuff. But on the right hand side, you have the LLM integration. Well, now you actually see what's happening inside, and you can pass in pieces of information in English, so prompt the large language models so that the code changes on the left hand side. And so this is where we're going. This is what Vibecoding is, where we have the assistance of large language model as we build software. Now, there's one part where he talks about this workflow of partial autonomy. So if you look at this, it says here, consider the full workflow of partial autonomy UI UX. So the idea is that we have this cyclical symbiosis, if you will, of humans and AI that are going to be or are working together. Essentially, we should not always, at least at this point, leave everything to AI writing our code or whatever AI is able to do for us, but rather we need to include human in the loop for verification to make this easy, fast to win. So you've got to have a form of verifying your code. One of the examples that he gave is that when he's using these tools, AI tools, to write code, Vibecoding, one thing that he does is he always wants to be able to look at a code, because he's a coder, to understand what's really happening and the quality of code, and also for security reasons. So that is where we are right now, but things are moving really fast, and that could change soon, where we can just let the machines do everything. But the idea is that we must understand that humans have to be in the loop. So you have the cyclical iteration that happens, human and AI. So the AI is good at generating things fast, and so humans are good at verifying the code, whatever is being built. That way the whole system, whatever we're building, is actually secure. And then he said something that 2025 is the year of agents. As you probably have heard many times, agents and agents and agents and agents. And then he said 2025 through 2035 is going to be the decade of agents, as we're seeing things moving real quickly. The other thing that I thought was really interesting that he talked about large language models is AI revolution and software development, how it's changing. In the beginning of computing, I would say in the beginning of computers and software, most of its usage, most of its innovations were attached to the military, especially in the United States military. But with large language models now, large language models are everywhere, which means we have the power of, as people. Think about it. You're able to just go online and use many different large language models to do virtually anything you want to do, from coding to writing papers, summarize things, and do all these things. So we as people have the power, which means the innovation around AI, large language model, is growing rapidly because the people actually have the power. The other brilliant part of this talk is the fact that he mentioned, of course, vibe coding, because he was the one who coined this vibe coding movement, if you will. And he said that he also was able to show that now kids are learning vibe coding. So they're just able to prompt a large language model and code is being written and they're building applications. He actually built a few applications. One of them is called Menu Gen, which allows you to take pictures of menus, which is actually a good idea because I always think about this. So the idea is that you take picture of a menu and then it generates the pictures, the actual pictures of the menu item. And you can see here, kids are vibe coding and doing cool, fun things. And then Vibecoding iOS application that he's done and all that. Now, I understand if you're a mobile developer or you're a developer of any type, you may be scared or afraid of embracing Vibecoding, embracing these things. So I don't think you should. You should embrace it. You should actually use this as part of your tooling. He built all these different things, which is very exciting, and I thought it was great. So talk is all about where are we going, where software, building software is going to. It's not about, well, programmers are being phased out. No, it's about understanding that the acceleration of the changes of software building, how software was built, is actually happening at high speed. So the main takeaway here is that things are changing in software development and you need to change with it, whether you're a developer or a non-developer person. The idea here is that things are moving forward. You've got to learn AI. You have to embrace AI because it's here to stay. And the people who actually embrace AI, who use it as a tool, those are the ones who are more likely able to survive what's already here, which is a great segue to let you know that if you really want to get deeper into AI, understanding how AI works, understanding how to use AI as a developer or a non-developer, I would invite you to join this awesome community called AIF, AI Foundations, built by these two amazing humans. I am privileged to have met them. I've been working with them for about 2 months now and a part of the team in this awesome community where not only you learn AI in general, but also learn how to actually use AI for productivity, but also to serve others, to create businesses out of it, okay? The great thing about this community, which I love, is if you go to classrooms, you get all these awesome courses about a large language model, generative AI, images, and all these things such as audio, mastering agents with N8N, and all of that. By the way, these vibe coding agents into apps, this is actually a course that I was asked to create for this community, and I was so happy to have had that opportunity. It's a wonderful course. You can learn how to go from agents to actually build full-fledged applications that are deployed, and you can actually take payments and all that great stuff. So there's a lot of things here. There's calls, and really the most important part about having community is the fact that you have people, like-minded people, to help you in your journey, because there's also a lot of calls. As you can see here, there's also vibe coding call. If you click here, this is me. So I actually run these calls, which are really fun, where I teach people, whether you're a developer or non-developer, how to think like an engineer and use these AI agents, AI tools to code up whatever you want to build. It's a wonderful community, and I'd like to invite you to join in and have access to all of this. So check out the link in the description. If you're still around, which I hope you are, I'm going to show you now how to really think like an engineer. Because whether you're a programmer or an engineer, you still need to understand the tools that will help you build software, because that's where we're going, right? Having the pride of becoming a software engineer still is there, but the idea now is that anybody can be a software engineer or a programmer. How do you, as a programmer or a non-programmer, are going to embrace these tools, these AI tools that now have access to actually be productive at building software, the way software is going to be built moving forward? And that is the skill you must master in order to survive. Okay, let me show you how to really think about this whole thing. Okay, now let's start from the beginning. Software engineers, people who build software, programmers, coders, and all of that, different names for the same thing. But what is software engineering? Building software requires a lot. First of all, you have to understand programming language or programming languages. Even if you understand programming in general, you master programming language, you need to also understand the tooling behind. So you need to understand version control, frameworks, dev environments, libraries, operating system you're building on, runtimes, servers, IDEs, integrated development environments, testing, and so many other things. But there is still more. You also need to understand a few other things. You need to understand the architecture of software. You need to understand how to actually code in an environment that is meant for production. You need to understand how to maintain, take care of that code. So there's a lot going on. Requirements gathering, architecture design, manually scaffolding the project that you're building, and understanding how to write low-level code such as models, controllers, as well as serializers, and all of these things that software developers must understand in order to successfully build software. And also there's styling, UI layouts. Now, even though this could be more for designers, but software engineers or developers have to actually be part of the process of building the code to build writing that code. There's also testing and Q&A and so many other things. And at the end, you have to know how to deploy these applications. Now, there are other kinds of engineers who are responsible for that. But in a nutshell, as a solid software engineer, you have to understand these skills and more. I forgot maintenance too. As I said, you have to learn how to maintain, versioning your code, versioning your projects, as well as the software that's been built. There's a lot that goes into becoming a software engineer as well as building software. What does that mean? Well, it means coding is really tough. It's really tough. But then AI came along and revolutionized everything. Nowadays, we have a lot of different tools that we can use. Vibecoding is one of those terms that was coined a few months ago of this year. And let's go back and see where that all started. Around February of 2025, this gentleman, Andrej Karpathy, he's a guru, a very smart gentleman who understands a lot about machine learning, large language models, and all of that. So, a genius. He comes up with this tweet that talks about there's a new kind of coding I call vibe coding, where you fully give in to the vibes, embrace exponentials, and forget that the code even exists. It's possible because the large language models, in this case Cursor, Composer with Sonnet, are getting too good. Also, I just talked to Composer with Super Whisper, so I barely even touched the keyboard. I asked for the dumbest things like decrease the padding of the sidebar by half because I'm too lazy to find it. I accept it all and life goes on. I don't read diffs anymore. When I get error messages, just copy paste them in with no comment. Usually that fixes the issue. The code grows beyond my usual comprehension. I'd have to really read through it for a while. Sometimes the large language model can't fix a bug, so I just work around it or ask for random changes until it goes away. It is not too bad for a throwaway weekend project, but still quite amusing. I'm building a project or web app, but it's not really coding. I just see stuff, say stuff, run stuff, and copy paste stuff, and it mostly works. So this tweet is what allows us to start using this term vibe coding, right? This vibe coding revolution that we are in right now. The idea is that we let AI code for us, but there's a few assumptions that are hidden here. It's very important to understand, and you can see in the language, it says decrease the padding on the sidebar by half. If you're not a developer or programmer, you wouldn't understand what that is. So that tells me that there's some language or the user has to understand a little bit of programming in order to get the most out of these AI programming or out of vibe coding. So you need to understand how to speak the lingo to get most out of vibe coding. Now, as a programmer, you may feel defeated. In fact, I felt that way as a programmer, thinking, well, if vibe coding becomes a thing, which is a thing, then I'm going to lose my job. The pride that as developers we have had worked so hard to acquire these skills. So for a long time, I would say, I will confess, I was a little bit, I would say, taken back or even afraid of the future. But then I started thinking, maybe I'm thinking this whole thing wrong. How about mixing the software development skills that I have, that you may have, with vibe coding? Well, I could mix software engineering plus vibe coding. And this makes sense because of what I said previously, which is the assumptions that you must understand a little bit of coding in order to become a really good vibe coder, because understanding the tech lingo is going to get you the best results. And so it made me think, okay, if I put together software engineering plus vibe coding, then vibe coding is going to allow me to, or allows us to abstract out all the complexity of software engineering, right? because now we can just say build me a task tracker app with tags, and that happens in the background. Okay, so I don't need to actually go and write the code myself. So that didn't mean that I will be obsolete as a software engineer, or software engineers are not needed anymore. I started thinking, how about using these tools again? How about using these AI agents that know how to code? How about using them as a leverage, as tools? Because at the end of the day, they really are tools. And so that's when things start changing for me. And so vibe coding now becomes a thing where I feel like it's going to allow me to not worry about the plumbing, about the intricacies of coding if I don't need to. So now I can focus on what instead on how. I could also say, for instance, build a time tracker and pass that through the agent, and then I get all the stuff. And the great thing also is that because these large language models that are fueling these agents that allow us to vibe code, they were trained on a massive amount of code bases. Most of them are really good, which means all of the best practices are actually built in when you vibe code. Not always, but most times. So talk about design patterns, security patterns, and all the intricacies of or best practices when it comes to building software. And the other thing, we have this rapid iteration, because now you're able to sit down, you have an idea, go in, type, and then you can see things happening real quick as you build your prototypes. And you can iterate through as many times as you want, because you can tweak things on the fly and see the results right away. That is the thought framework I've been following to get me out of the funk, if you will, of thinking that all of our jobs are gone. There's no more software engineers in the world, because we still need software engineers. Those skills are also equally important. So reverse the thinking, and let's use these tools to our advantage by using them as tools. So vibe coding, AI agents that write code are just tools, and so we use them. So when it comes to vibe coding, this is the structure, or at least the workflow that happens. So at first we have a prompt, build me X, Y, and Z, and then there is a generation of that code that happens. And then we're able to review ourselves or let the AI, the coding agent, to review that. And then we can fine tune that prompt to get probably maybe something added and go from there. So we can extend adding things as we go. That is the beauty of vibe coding. And at the end, you're also able to actually deploy these applications. And of course, there are some trade-offs when it comes to vibe coding and building things yourself. Number one is that we have this black box concern. It means this code that's being generated by these AI agents is, well, you may not be able to understand the code. If you are a software engineer, of course, you are able to understand that. But most people who are not engineers, they may not be able to understand that code. And number two, we have what we call limited customization. What that means, well, some features may require you to actually know how to code. Again, as a software engineer, there is your leverage. If you're not, then you are able to also learn those skills to be able to understand what's going on. Now, coming back and putting everything together, vibe coding like an engineer. This is the thought I think even if you're not an engineer, you need to follow. Because the future is going to be where most of us who are engineers and those who are not are going to come together in building applications. What does that mean? It means nowadays you don't have to be an engineer to be able to build an application. Now, it's hard for engineers to hear this because, again, we become afraid of these tools because it's going to eradicate our jobs. I don't want you to think that way. If you are not a coder, an engineer, you need to learn how to think or how to vibe code like an engineer. What does that mean? Well, we have to master these 5 skills in vibe coding. All of these I got from deep learning course that talks more about that. Okay, so the first things you have to think about is the thinking process, the frameworks, checkpoints, debugging, and context. Let's go ahead and, of course, the source here, Deep Learning AI Vibe Coding 101. So you should go and check it out. A few levels here. I'm going to just go over real quick. So the first level of thinking is what we call the logical thinking. The first thing that happens here is that we have this question: what is this thing that we're building? For example, you could say chess, a board game with specific moves. So that is the logical thinking, right? answering the question, what is that we're building? And then we have another level here of analytical thinking. So the question usually is, how does it work and how do I get good at it? So the idea is that you're breaking down the rules of that game, of the whatever it is that you're building. Okay, so to understand how these pieces move, what makes it winning or not winning, and how all that works. Okay, the strategies and the end games. And then we have what we call the computational thinking. Computational comes from computer, which means now we're dealing with other things other than our own way of thinking. So the question here is, what patterns and rules would a computer need to recreate this thing that we're trying to build? Example would be to figuring out how to represent the board, the legal moves, the turn, the order, all of this in code, because now we're in the computational realm. And then we have the procedural thinking. The question here is, what exact steps, are the procedures, does the computer follow, including edge cases? So in this case, for example, would be to write algorithms for move validation to make sure, okay, when does it move left or right or up and down? Check detection or pawn promotion, time controls, and all of these things. This is a chess example, okay? But you can apply the same concepts everywhere else, whatever you're trying to build. Then we go down to frameworks. Now, if you're not a coder, that's okay. This is part of trying to give you the ideas on how to think like an engineer. So frameworks, let's go ahead and define what are they. These are pre-built tools like libraries, SDK, software development kits, templates, and all of that, which allow developers to actually build things without having to go and rebuild everything from scratch. So just think of tooling. These are part of frameworks. Now the question is, why do frameworks in general matter? And you can notice that what we're doing here, I'm showing you, if you're not a developer, how to think like an engineer so you can become better at vibe coding. So why do tools like this or frameworks matter? Well, they matter because they define what you can and can't build easily, and they also help us speed up development. What does that mean? It means you can build software from ground up, not using any tool, building everything yourself. But that is not the best way of doing it, because there are many other people who came before you, before us, who already figure things out. It's the same thing as we always say, don't reinvent the wheel. Just use the wheel. It's okay. Here's a tip. Before you ask your AI, build me a countdown widget, for example, decide which framework, could be React, Flutter, etc. Now you may say, well, I don't know about any frameworks. Well, I would encourage you to go and learn a little bit about them. I'm talking to people who are not coders or have coded a little bit, they're learning, okay? So it's okay to learn these things. If you don't want to become a coder, but you need to think like an engineer, like a coder, like a developer, okay, this is where the skills, this is where the world of tech is going. You've got to speak the lingo. So I skipped one, but we're going to go to debugging. The debugging part is very important because just like software engineers need to learn how to debug, which means they have to go and look for ways to fix errors that may happen in their code, you have to be masterful at this skill. So the method here is you need to be methodical, which means you have to test one thing at a time until you find the issue that needs to be fixed. So a good example is the code syntax correct. That's a question you could actually ask the AI or ask yourself as you think through to solving these problems. So another one is, are my dependencies installed? Dependencies are other pieces of libraries that sustain, that are going to help your application to actually work. Now, when you're using AI, in this case, vibe coding, you need to learn to describe exactly the error and your environment in plain language. That way, the model can easily suggest that fix. So this comes into many different forms. The next is context. Large language models need context. What is context? Context are all the pieces of data that large language models need so they understand, they have a context of what is that you're trying to do or trying to solve. And so context plays a huge part in this. So definition, let's define things. All the info, again, you feed to model so it doesn't make stuff up or miss details. Most often when you vibe coding, it's not that the large language model or the agent is not able to solve the problem. Most often is your ability to give enough context so the large language model, the AI agent, is able to solve that problem. There are many kinds of context you can add to help the large language model or the AI agent help you build this application. Different types. So code snippets. You can actually take code snippets of an error or if something is not working and give it back to the large language model, in this case the agent, and then it will be able to help you. Error messages, taking a screenshot, you get an error, you can take a screenshot of that error and pass back to the AI vibe coding tool and go from there. Docs, documents, screenshots, as I said, project specifics, and anything you can extrapolate to give context to the large language model, it's going to be welcome. Why does it matter? Why does context matter? Well, as I've said, it matters because the more context you give, the more clear is the large language model. These AI agents are going to be able to know exactly how to help you, how to find the correct answer and create what you are hoping to see. Now, the idea here is not that you have to be an engineer. That's the reason why I'm putting it all together here. You don't have to be an engineer, but you must understand how engineers think, because you will understand how to change your language when you prompt these AI agents, these coding AI agents that you use to build applications with vibe coding. So that is the leverage you have when it comes to vibe coding. Whether you are an engineer or a non-engineer, you need to understand how engineers work, because that is the advantage, that is the leverage, that is the upper hand you will have moving forward. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, I'd like to invite you to go check out AIF School Community, which I have the privilege to be a part of the team. These two awesome human beings, two brothers who run AI Foundations, they gave me this opportunity to contribute to their community, which I believe in, and they have a lot of things here. They've got courses, talk about large language models, generative AI images. By the way, if you're a coder or a non-coder, you will get a lot of information, a lot of value from this community. And by the way, and not only because of all these amazing courses that they have, they also have a full calendar with amazing information. Calls, by the way, you can see here we have this vibe coding with Vinci. This is me, something I do every 2 weeks where I teach the community how to think about vibe coding and how to really leverage, whether you are a coder already or somebody who started learning about AI. So it's a really good community with a lot of amazing people, the connections that you will have. It's a pleasure to be. So if you are interested in learning more about vibe coding, AI, and really embrace AI at a different levels as an engineer or a non-coder, automation, and be a part of a thriving group that I'm proud to be a part of, check the link in the description. You will enjoy it. Okay, let's continue. Now, if you don't know how to code, you may say, well, how do I do that? The beauty is you can still use AI to ask questions. Let's say you don't understand what an API is. Well, ask it, what is an API? And explain to me how API works and what is the relationship between APIs and whatever I'm trying to build. And now you understand what an API is, and next time you prompt, you will have a little bit more to offer in the form of context to the large language models, which in turn you become a better vibe coder. I hope you're seeing the patterns here. Now, the Vibe Coding 101 course that I showed you earlier, they shared this flow here, this path to follow when vibe coding. So you can see at the top we have MVP or feature, and then we put all that in and we test things, we get an error, we debug, and we have a checkpoint. A checkpoint is a place where each time you are vibe coding, most of these AI agent tools are able to create a checkpoint where things used to work. So you can always roll back to that checkpoint, okay? So it's a checkpoint, you can go back to MVP, feature, and continue the cycle, okay? So this is the path they said to follow, and I agree with it. So again, you can find deeplearn.ai Vibe Coding 101 to get a fuller picture of what this is all about. All right, so now that I've given you the sort of basis, the fundamentals of understanding about vibe coding, maybe if you are a developer, removing that fear of using vibe coding in your coding when you're building applications. And if you're not a coder or a software engineer, understand that you must start learning how to prompt these AI tools. And so we're going to start building something. So the goal of this video is to give you all the tools that you need to start thinking about what the future holds. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I know what the future holds, but looking at the patterns of AI, vibe coding, where are we going? If you are a software engineer, you've got to embrace vibe coding. There's no way around it. If you're not a software engineer, you've got to learn how software engineers think so that you understand the lingo. That way you can communicate better when vibe coding, so you can actually build applications that you want to build without knowing how to code. So stay tuned, and we're going to continue. I'm going to show you how to really vibe code something and use other tools such as N8N, an automation tool, and look at these pieces so we can put all them together to be able to actually build something useful. So let me show you how to think about vibe coding and using AI tools with all the other tools that you may have at your disposal to build stuff. So what we'll do is we're going to leverage N8N. If you've never heard of N8N, it's okay. I will give you an introduction to that. And vibe coding. So because I like hands-on and I think that's the best way to learn, I'm going to show you how to think about a little problem and how to use these tools to actually build something. So here's how software, let's say web apps, usually work. So usually you have a back end. What that is, a back end is all of the intricate ways in which the application works that users don't usually see. Okay, and then we have the front end. This is what the users see. So traditionally, you'll have to be a software engineer again to build a backend, a full-fledged backend, meaning you have to know code, you have to know how to deal with servers, databases, authentication, and all of that. Now with AI agents, with AI coding tools, well, all that is pretty facilitated for us. Okay. So N8N can also be used as an automation tool, but also as a backend, which I will show you. And so what we'll do is we're going to use N8N as a backend of our application. And then the front end is going to be built using vibe coding. And the cool thing is, as you will see, we can actually use both for front end and back end. We can use the back end of N8N that we build, drag and drop, create workflows, agents, and everything. And then front end, we're going to send prompts to an AI agent that knows how to build code to actually build the front end, which is going to be connecting to the back end. That's what we're going to be doing. Let's go ahead and get started understanding real quick what N8N is and how to install that and get started. All right, so next, if you don't have N8N, this is the time for you to go ahead and create an account. And it's very easy. If you go to n8n.io, as you see here, it's very nice. You can go ahead and get started for free. Click here and go through the process. Add all of the information, and you can add your account name. There it is. You can start free for 14-day trial if you don't have an account. So if you don't have N8N, go ahead and create an account and should be good to go. And you will see something similar to this. So what we're going to do next is just say create a workflow, and this will create sort of a canvas that is open for us to get started. So there are a few things you can see here. We have the editor, we have execution. So obviously this is where the executions of our workflows are going to be. So we're going to focus on the editor. But the first thing here, I can click here and this happens. I can search for a trigger. I can search for a starting point and node. So everything is essentially a node in N8N. So what I want to find here, I can just go ahead and say I want a webhook. So you can see a webhook says starts the workflow when a webhook is called. Now, there's a few things here. Let me make this a little bit smaller, perhaps we can see. So the webhook has some settings that are predefined. You can see that we have parameters, we have settings and docs. So if you want to learn more about webhook, you can go there. But let's focus on parameters. So a webhook is a URL essentially that works as a trigger point, which means this is going to always be waiting for a trigger. We're waiting for an event to happen. So this is going to be the catalyst to whatever else you want to happen in your workflow. And the great thing also is that you can see you have the test URL and we have the production URL. We'll look into those. Let's start with the test URL. So this is a URL that if you show this or take this somewhere and pass whatever needs to be passed, right, it's going to trigger something, okay? Which means it's going to trigger something to happen with other nodes that are connected. Right now we only have one node. Right, so now we have the HTTP method here. So in this case here we have different kinds of methods. This is how the internet works. Think of these HTTP methods as the way that the internet is able to communicate with servers. So when we say get, all we're saying, okay, we want to get something from the server. We have get, we have head, we have patch, we have post, put, and so forth, and delete. Most likely you're going to be using get and post for most things that you do on the internet. Okay, so that's what we have here. And then we have the path. This is the path, as you see, is attached to this URL. Now, for this path here, I like to usually put something that makes sense. So I'm going to say upload, because this webhook is going to trigger an upload event, okay? Or it's going to do an upload event. And then we have authentication. We don't need to worry about that. Okay, so next I have options here. For options, we have allowed origin, field name, and all these things. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave as is with nothing. Okay, that's it. So now you can see in our canvas we have our webhook. Okay, what do we want to happen next? Well, once we do that happens, or we upload something, we want to pass that through another node. So what I want to happen here, I'm going to use the field node. So we can edit fields. So what does it do? Well, you can modify, add, or remove item fields. So essentially, we are working with data. So what we're saying is that whatever we're getting from the previous node, the webhook, we want to do something with it. Whatever is coming in, we may want to select field A and ignore field B and get field C. So you can start manipulating these pieces of data that are coming in. And so this is a good representation of what N8N really is and how it works in a nutshell. You'll see that we have the input. So there's always something coming in. We're feeding something into our node. And here is the actual settings of the field. And then we have the output. This is where things happen. We can set things. In this case here, I'm just going to leave as is. But if we had everything run already, we could do other things, which is drag and drop fields that we want to pass along. But in this case, I'm just going to leave as is. So we have a very simple workflow here. Remember, this is not an agent yet, but it's just a workflow. So we have a webhook. When we get something from this webhook, something is triggered, it's going to have some data, and then we're going to pass through this field, and hopefully we get something. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how do we test this with actual upload. This is when things start getting really exciting, because we're going to talk about Vibecoding, how to leverage AI tools, coding tools, to quickly test things and go from there. All right, let's go ahead and get started next. So we've just created a webhook, and we understand the basics of webhook, and we added that node in N8N, and then we have the extract node. So the idea is that the webhook is going to be listening, waiting for something to be uploaded. Now, how do we test that out? So because of what we're going to be doing in this course, which is the end goal is to build an actual application from, or at least using, leveraging agents. So let's go ahead and look at Vibecoding. There are many tools out there we can use for building applications or using AI to help us build applications. Bolt.new is one of them that I'm going to show you how to use in this course because it's easier. Now, if you already have experience using AI coding tools, then you can use whatever tool you want. But in this course, I'm going to use Bolt.new because I think it's easier to manage and gives you real good results, especially if you are still in the beginning stages. So Bolt.new is the one that you want to use in this course, or the one that we're going to be using in this course. All right, so let's go to Bolt.new. As you see here, make sure Bolt.new. And most likely this is what you're going to be seeing. Again, you can read a little bit about it. And you can go ahead and pass in a prompt. This is the cool thing about Vibecoding. So I can say, for instance, build me a modern landing page for an AI company. Something very simple like that. I'm going to click that. And of course, it's going to say, well, you don't have an account. Go ahead and sign in. So this is the place where you actually go ahead and sign in with GitHub if you have one, or sign in with Google, or even with email if you wish to do so. I already done that. It's very simple. Go ahead and do that. And the thing is, once you sign in, you have an account, then you're going to have credits to get started. But I would encourage you to go ahead and actually have a subscription. I think it's $20 a month or so. That way it's easier and you have a lot of credit, especially to go through this course. It's a good investment. Okay, not affiliated, but it's something that I think it's a good investment. But if you just want to test it out before you go full on, you can go ahead and just create an account and then play around with it. And once you need more coins, you can either buy those coins, or I call coins, but they're credits, I should say, or go ahead and do a subscription and you get a lot of credits. I already have an account, so go ahead and do that, and I'll see you in a second. Okay, so when I go to my Bolt.new here, you can see that I'm logged in. If I hover over, I have my subscription. I'm going to show you real quick what it looks like. So for Pro, you get 10 million tokens. That's a lot, depending on how you use it. It's about $20 a month as of recording this video. Okay, and if you want to go Pro, you can go there. But we have all of that. We can just go ahead and start prompting. So the idea is very simple. We know that we have this workflow here. This is where we created. And if I double click again, because we want to test it, but we want to test it in a way that we can see progress. We can also see how things work, especially also introducing these AI coding tools, which we're going to be using throughout this course. So it's a good mix. So what we'll do here, you go back, I'm going to go back here, go to your webhook, make sure you get this test URL, and notice that I added upload. You could have left as it was, but I like to make these paths better. So I'm going to copy these. If you just click here, you can see this says URL copied. And so then I'll go to Bolt here and I'm going to prompt it. So I'm going to put some text to say what I want to do. The intention here is to create a very simple upload page that allows our users to upload CSV files, PDF, and TXT. So I'm going to say, generate a modern page where users are able to upload a TXT, PDF, and CSV files to an N8N workflow. And I can say, here's the webhook. You need to send the uploaded file to. Okay? Also, I'm going to say, make sure to include all of the code necessary so that there are no errors when uploading files. Okay, let's go ahead and see. Hit enter, and this is what's going to happen. So now the agent, the tool is going to be thinking, because it has an agent that is working in the background, and a lot of things are happening. You can see we have code. This is the code that is being created as things are happening here. You can see based on your requirements, I'll create a modern file, upload page that connects to your N8N and all of that. And it defaulted to start creating using, I believe, Next.js. You can see there's all these amazing files. All of these is being created as we just sitting here. Shows the design, the clean design, and all of that. And of course, it's telling us the steps where it's at. So create initial files, install dependencies, and just doing all these things. And we can just relax, go sip on water and tea if we wish to do so. So we let it do its thing. It may take a few moments because there's a lot of work that's happening. As I said, things are happening. But you can click here. If I'm going to make this larger, you can click. We have preview. So things are not happening yet because code is being written. And so we got to wait for a bit. Okay, so after a few moments, you can see that we have a nice preview here. And of course, it tells us I've created a modern, user-friendly file upload interface that connects directly to your N8N workflow. Okay, very good. And all of that. So now we're interested in testing it out. And also here you can see there's this link here. You can actually click and this will take you to connect to the app. So essentially the server that's running this is going to now be running here. It's better because we can see everything. I'm going to make this a little bit larger so you can see. Now, if I try to upload anything, click, you can see it takes me here. Very good. So I can go and upload whatever I need to upload. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go first. If I try to do that, I'm going to probably get an error because coming here, I need to click something. So I'm going to actually go back here. You can see that we have execute workflow. I can execute workflow from here. I can click here. I'm going to click execute workflow. And now it says waiting to trigger for trigger event. So that means that URL, it's now waiting, right? Our webhook. So if I go here, hopefully if I go click and let's use this txt, I'm going to just click. Let's go ahead and upload files. Okay, upload failed with status 404. Okay, whatever that means. Let's go back to our place here. You can see that nothing is quite happening and I can perhaps go to executions and looks like nothing was executed. Okay, so maybe we have a problem here because this wasn't triggered. So I'm going to go back to N8N or rather to Bolt and I'm going to just say I received an error. I'm going to say 408, 404 error when tried to upload a file. Please fix the issue. So we can go back to our helper here, our AI agent, our AI coding tool to see if we can fix that problem. Okay, so it says here that change the form field name to file to files as an editor typically expects. Okay, added metadata about the file being uploaded. Okay, did a few things and let's see if that's going to work. Let's try from here. Same thing. Okay, so maybe something is not right because I need to say execute again to make sure that the URL is ready. This is something that happens all the time. You forget to click execute workflow. The other way would be to make it active, which means the URL is going to be production and then we can change that, but we'll do that later. Okay, let's try again and upload. So you can see here it says this webhook is not registered for post requests. Did you mean to make a GET request? Well, here's the good thing. That means now you see here it says GET. I'm going to double click and then I'm going to go say stop so that it doesn't listen. The thing here is that we must make this a post because we are sending information to this server. We want this to be able to receive something. So we got to change that to post. And let's save, make sure we save our changes, execute. And we go here and I'm going to try again. Let me just refresh real quick. And I'm going to upload, find that txt file and then upload. And look at that. Now it's green, which means everything hopefully went well. If I go back here and voila, you can see that indeed it's working. Here you can see that it received this. This is what we call a text.plain MIME type, or rather it's also a binary. So this is what it was sent. This is what we received, which is exactly that. If I said view, you're going to see it is indeed a txt with all of that. Now I'm going to go to schema. We can see the other way to view all of this. Now this is important. Why? Because we may need to pass in a few fields that we want to capture from the previous execution. For instance, we may need to get this file name. So I can actually drag this. Remember, this is under this edit field, right? The second step, the second node. I can say, well, I want to see the file name or I want to get the content type. So I can actually take this and grab and put it there. Now I want to show you what happens here. So you can see now we have these fields to set. That means now we have this name, says body.content type. I can just change this to say, let's call this maybe MIME type as the variable, the field. And then you can see here a little bit of code. What's going on here? Let me make this a little bit larger. So what happens here is that we have this fixed, which looks like that, and we have this expression. We're saying in code we want to go to get the payload, which is all of this that comes in input in the JSON format as a JSON object, right? And then we're going to go to access the body field, which is this one here. And then we're going to probe in and get the content type, which is this field here. From there, we're going to get what? This value text plain. And that's the reason why you get the results going to be text plain. What that means is that through this piece of code that was generated from pulling all of that information, put it here in a field, this is the code that internally is happening. This is what's happening internally. The JSON is the payload, the whole payload, the whole input that's coming in. And then we say dot to say access something else in programming, access the body object. And then once we get in the body here, and you can see we can fold and close like that, right? That's the beauty. That means then we can go in by saying dot content type to get to the content type. And so now we have this field that we are trapping, that we are extracting a few fields that we want. If you wanted, we can also say I want to get the field or file name. I can do the same thing, just get that and drop there. And I can say file name, maybe just file name like this. And the same thing happens. We go to JSON object, the main object, and then we go to body, say dot body, go here and get the file name, which is this field here, which is going to be the result or the field that we're getting. The value is going to be Sherlock.txt. Okay, a little bit of code, fun stuff. And that's it. So now you can see, I'm going to go ahead and save that. A double click. If I were to put something else, let's say I go back here to finalize everything, I can go ahead and say I want just to see what else is going to come. I'm going to say respond to webhook, which means it's going to return data for webhook. So I'm going to click that. And I'm going to just change this to say, well, just give me all incoming items. What that means, everything that is coming from the previous node, I just want you to show me. So let's go back to my uploader. Look at this. Just in a few minutes, I was able to create a backend and a front end using AI. I didn't have to know anything about code. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing again. Let's just refresh. I guess I can come here and let's just use this one because it's the same application. I'll probably have to go and connect again. And let's upload something else, right? Here, I'm going to just upload this CSV file. Let's upload. It's going to error out. You know why? Because I forgot to execute. So execute the trigger, right? To make sure it actually works. And let's start again. Use that one. Okay, let's refresh real quick. Okay, let's try again. Let's use this new one. Okay, let's upload. And it should be good. Aha. Now we have another error. Problem in node webhook node not correctly configured. What does that mean? Well, it means that in our webhook here, we actually need to change this respond because we said that we want to respond to webhook. So we're going to respond to the final webhook there for this to work. Okay, so change that using respond to webhook node because that's what we added at the end. All right, let's go ahead and save this. And I'm going to execute again. And this time, let's go ahead and do the same thing. Upload a file. And it should be good. And if we go back here, you can see that indeed successfully everything worked. Now you can see the results. If I come here, you can see that we're receiving everything from the input from the previous node. And at the end, we have also the MIME type as well as the file name, which are the pieces that we wanted to pass along so that the respond to webhook is able to display that as an output. Okay, so the webhook now has this output which gets this information. Very simple, but a really good foundational structure that we are going to develop, really use the same structure to start manipulating data and getting information, ultimately put that into a database. So a slow start, but I hope you're understanding, you're seeing the structure here. Most importantly, you saw firsthand how to use AI, these coding tools that we have now to do some vibe coding to test our workflows. Okay, so there we go. And I hope this is helpful, and play around with this. Maybe a little bit strange at first, but just go for it and let me know what you think. So we know that our workflow works here because we're able to use the webhook with our vibe coded user interface, and we are able to extract things. You can see we say we want to extract the content type, and all the while we also have the files that is coming in, which is whatever that we are passing through. So it looks like I had to download that, but that's okay. So we get it and it's all good. Now, this is not the final, of course, but we're going to add a few things, because what I want to do next is I want to make sure that once we get things, in fact, this, I'm going to double click. I'm going to change the name of this because we can actually change all these nodes so they actually make sense with namings. So I want to call this extract fields as such. I'm going to rename it. Okay, there we go. Nothing really changed and everything is good. So we go back, you can see it says extract fields. But what I want to add between here, okay, because this was just a test, okay, I'm going to save that. I'm going to add another node here. I'm going to click here and I'm going to find a switch. So a switch is what that name implies. It's going to route whatever's happening to different places. So we want to route items depending on whatever is coming in. And this is the reason why, I'm going to go back here, that we have this content type. Okay, this is what we call the MIME type. So when you talk about files in general, files on the internet or in computing, they have different MIME types. And you can see that depending on the kind of file, we have this text /CSV, we have, I think, application PDF and all these different things. So each file that is uploaded, it has its own MIME type. And we're going to use that to route what happens next, because as they come as a binary file, we want to be able to do something. So I'm going to add here a switch. So I'm going to say switch. You can start typing. There it is. And there is our switch. And you can see right away, again, we have the same thing structure here. We have the input, we have the switch itself. This is where we do the logic, right? They go through things and manipulate things. And then we have the output on this other side. So now what we want to do? Well, we can change the type or pass in different parameters for our switch. So for instance here, for the mode, I can click here. We have the rules. We have expression modes. Let's keep with the rules mode. So for our routing here, what do we want to do? Well, we want to pass in a value. What is the value that we want to pass in, that we want to use that as the catalyst to route anything else, everything else? Well, we want to get the MIME type. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to put all there. So you can see now it went ahead and did this again. So this is the expression. This is JavaScript programming language. Again, this, remember this $JSON, this is the whole payload, this whole object here. And we're saying, I want to go and get this whole object here internally in code. And I'm going to say dot, I'm going to access what? The MIME type field and get whatever the value is, which in this case is going to be text /CSV. That's exactly what's happening here. So we're going to say if this here is equal to what? We want to make sure that if it's equal to something else. Now, I'm going to do something that is code, just like this. I'm going to actually copy all of this, and I'm going to paste in here. So what I want to say if whatever is coming here, this MIME type, if it's equal, say, to text /CSV, then I know it's a CSV file. And so if it's equal to that, how do I represent that in code? I'm going to go ahead and delete all of that, but remember, I'm still inside of this double curly braces, and I'm going to put double quotes like that. So this is considered code. Okay, you have to do that. Expression. So I'm going to put here application /PDF. So what I'm saying, if this MIME type that we get, which is going to be this result, is equal to application /PDF, then I'm going to go to a different route. And how do I know this? Well, I know this. You can just search online to say, find all of MIME types, and you can find the actual text that will come out as, just like we see here. And I can add another one, another route. So I'm going to say if, again, I'm going to copy this, Or I can still do the same what I did here before if I'm going to pass that MIME type again. In this case, it's CSV because that's what we're passing. But if the expression is, I'm going to just copy this again, is equal to the value. Now I'm going to just copy this one because I want to check for CSV files. It has to be exactly like that. Okay. Look, I made a mistake. I forgot the double quotes and we got that problem. But now we put it back. It's all green. So now we're going to say if MIME type, whatever comes in as a field, is text CSV, I know it is true. Then I'm going to go to a different route. And I can add as many as I want. Let me add the last one here. I'm going to do the same thing and put it here. If MIME type, in this case CSV, but we want to make sure that if in the case the MIME type is something different, in this case, let's say text plain, this is another MIME type that you can look online to find all different MIME types for different files. So I'm saying if it's text txt file, then I can do something else. So if I go back here, you can see now we have these 3 different use cases. So you can see the first one, I'm going to click here. You can see for the first one, if MIME type is application PDF, then what I want to do? Well, I want to extract information from that PDF file. And so what we'll do here, let me just go ahead and delete this for now. In this case, what I want to do, I'm going to find another node that is specialized in extracting PDF files. So I can just say extract. So I can say extract from file, and we have all these options. Look at it. We have extract from CSV, HTML, and I want, in this case, for PDF. So now it's going to go ahead and extract everything from that file because it knows I have a PDF file. Okay, I'm going to go back. And the next one is going to be, let me click again. This is the PDF file. And the next one is the CSV file. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click here and look for extract from CSV file, and I'm just going to leave as that right now. And then the last one we said is going to be just plain text txt file. So I'm going to click here, look for extract file from, and text file, txt text file. There we go. Okay, so we have all of these and all of them are looking good. Okay, let me go ahead and run this one more time and see if this is going to work. Click here, or you can click here to execute. And I'm going to pass in a PDF file, and hopefully we're going to see something happen. But this is not going to work. Let me go ahead and click here and make this smaller so we can actually stop this. And for that, I need to change this. Let's just change this for like that so that it works, hopefully. Let's go ahead and save. And execute. So I'm going to pass in let's start with the PDF file. So I know that my user interface still works. It should. I'm going to refresh real quick just to make sure. Reconnect. And I'm going to click. I'm going to go to a PDF. Let's go ahead and upload. Let's go back here. You can see that we have an error. Problem node extract from file. Okay, let's go ahead and click and see what the problem is. So it looks like the operation expects the node's input data to contain a binary file data, but none was found. Okay, so something is not right here. And instead of data, I'm going to call this file because it seems to me that file, input binary file, is the name that it comes as when we have things being added. So let's go ahead and save as such, and I'm going to try to do the same here. Just call this file. Let's see if that is going to help. And for each one of these, it's going to be, I'm going to just add file. Destination is going to also be file. Let's see. Okay, it's going to save. If we go to extract fields, you'll notice that we're able to extract do the manual mapping, meaning we're able to say, okay, we're going to fetch MIME type and file name. But the thing is, we also want to continue along and pass in this information here, which is the actual file, the actual binary. So to do that, we're going to just say, tick this to say include other input fields, because there are other input fields that perhaps we're not seeing here, but this is part of an input field. So we're going to just put everything in there. Okay. So this is going to allow for us to be able to get the webhook, or rather the file that we're uploading, along with all these other pieces of data. Okay. So whenever you get that error, most likely that's what's happening. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that you want to actually change this to the name that you see here. Okay. So I'm just going to put the files just like it goes in as you see there. Now let's go ahead and run again and see if we can pass in perhaps a txt file again. So it's running. That's a txt. Then upload. Item to return found. It's okay, but you can see that this actually worked. Okay, we have files, went through. This should be files. That's what we need to pass in as. All right, let's make sure that every one of these says files. Let's try again. txt. Okay, so you can see that indeed worked. Let's go ahead and do this one here, which is going to be CSV, just for completion. I always have to re-upload. Let's go to CSV and upload, and it works. So you can see that now we're able to get this to work. Okay, so all of these, the switches that we put together here to switch depending on the kind of file that we're uploading, we are invoking or triggering the right extract type. So we have for PDF, CSV, and for text. All right, and if you click here, you can see that indeed we get the information be passed along, and this looks amazing. So if I go here, you can see that all works just fine. We have input and output. If we go to JSON, or let's go to table, maybe schema, you can see we have the headers, everything. This is part of the payload containing the files and everything, as well as the actual body with file name, content type, and that. Okay, so you can see the MIME type is also being passed along here. Very good. So this is working. This is actually moving forward, and make sure you get to this point where you can see these things happening. So we slowly building up our workflow here. All right, so let's look at some details that I think it's very important for us to keep in mind, especially as we build these workflows. So if you look here, you can see, I'm going to go back. Let's look at webhook. Actually, let's go to the extracted fields, because by then we have the file or the binary file that we uploaded. I want you to look at this. So you can see here, this is files. This is what we sort of struggled with earlier to figure out, okay, down the line, how do other nodes will see this file as? It's very important because as you noticed that as we go down the line per se, we had to make sure that we had the file name. So let me go back to one of these. I think this is the best part. You can see we must have the same name as the file upload, the file name, the binary file that was uploaded. And you may ask, okay, so how do I know this? Where is this coming from? Now, there are different ways to make sure that you always have the same name, because that is important as we go down the line to get the actual file name. As you saw earlier, we had to come, let me go back here. We had to make sure that we actually have the files as the input binary field. And if we go back to, let's say, to table, that's not going to show anything. And if I go back here, you will see that the files, it was attached the moment we uploaded this particular file. So every time we upload something, we have this file's name as the name of the file. Okay, so why am I going over this? Well, number one is because of the issues we had. We had to go and change all that. But what we can do is, if we go back to Bolt.new, our vibe coding side of things, I'm going to show you something real quick here. So don't mind the code. It's okay. I'm going to just show you something that you probably, so you're aware of it. As you know, these tools allow you to prompt them and then it spits out the code. So all this code here that we have, if we go to source, you can see all of these things. This is the code that's run to show, to have this user interface and the functionality. So I'm going to go into the code here. Again, don't worry too much if you don't know code, but I think it's important for us to take a look. So if you go to code, I said source files, and we go to file upload. So we can see you can open these different folders here. I'm going to go to file upload. We have file upload CSS and all that. We don't want that. We actually want to go to services, upload services. So you can click here if that's open, or you can come down here and go to find services. There we go, services, and upload services or service. Double click. But what I want you to look at, first of all, you can see that we have this const N8N webhook URL. So this is the URL that we added in our prompt to say, use this URL as the webhook, right? And so it did that. Wonderful. But I want you to look at this upload file, okay, this piece of code here. There's a lot going on. So what this is doing, this is the actual code that is called to upload the file that we are passing through, right? But you can see that if we go below here, you can see that whenever we upload a file internally, what happens is that we create this thing called a form data. What that means is just it's an object, right, in programming that allows you to add things to it. So what we're saying is that we are going to create a little box. In this box, which is going to be what's going to be sent out to N8N, right, to do things with this file. So as we prepare this box, we want to add something. That's why we say append. So we're adding something to that box. But notice what happens here. We are actually saying files is going to be the name of the item that we're going to be sending in a box. So we are preparing the box. Just think of USPS or UPS or a mailing service. You prepare a box, you start putting things inside of that box that are going to be sent out, sent over to somebody else. So that's what we're saying here. We're saying, well, the file that we get, that users upload, we're going to take that file, but we are going to give it a name. That's why the file here says files. Now, we could say also in the code, this is what we call a comment. It says change from file to files. This is something that I asked to change, or it knew what to do with that, okay? But that doesn't matter. This is important. Why? Because, again, it says files here. If you go back here, you can see here, it says files. So all of this is setting up what is going to be sent as here. This is important. That means what? It means if you want to have a uniform way of getting this information, what I would suggest you do is in your Bolt.new, you can always say, let's go back to here, the prompt. You can say something, make sure that the file being uploaded has the name or is named. You can say data, because that seems to be the default name for any file that's uploaded in N8N. I could be wrong, but that would be the one. Okay? So you can actually change that data instead of files, or instead of files. Okay, so I'm gonna hit enter just to show you. As it is, because we fixed a few things, it still works. But this is something to keep in mind whenever you're getting into errors when you upload things. And as I showed you, we're having issues down the line in our N8N. It's because it wouldn't recognize that file name. Okay, so it changed. Nothing really has changed in terms of the user interface. But let's go again to code here, because I think it's fun. Let's get used to looking at code, even though maybe something that we don't understand completely. And voila, you can see now it changed to data. So that means what? Look what's going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. So it's going to allow me to connect to the app because I made changes in the code. But now I haven't changed anything in this code. What do you expect is going to happen if I upload something? Right, I'm going to get an error because I have manually changed all of the names for these files to say files, because that is what it was added as prior, right? So you know what's going to happen. I'm going to run it anyway to show you that this is going to give me that error. So now I'm going to go ahead and upload another file. I should get an error. And there we go. There's an error. If I go back to here, you can see that the problem here, voila, if I click, you can see the item has no binary field files item, right? Because it's saying, well, I don't know, because look what happened. Now it says data, right? That means then I can come here and just change to data. And I need to make sure to go in all of these. I'm doing all this manually because I want you to see what happens when errors like that happen and how to fix them. This is going to be data, and it's going to be data, because that is what's coming in as you saw in code that we changed that. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to execute. Let's go back again. I'm going to just refresh to make sure. And now it should work again as expected. I can take PDF file and upload. It should work, right? Look at this. Now we can see everything went successfully and went through this switch and went to the PDF file. Open, there's data, and input binary field is data. And to the right hand side, you can see we have everything, right? All the information about the text that was extracted from our PDF file, right? So that is one thing that I wanted to make sure you understand, and using these AI coding tools to help you troubleshoot that, and always keep that in mind. Okay, it was very manual, a little bit of code, but I think it's a good thing so that we are aware of. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Let me show you the architecture of how to think about this workflow, okay? Because eventually we want to be able to pass in a few other things through this workflow. What I mean by that is we understand how webhooks work and what they entail. Essentially, we understand that we're able, for instance, to pass through, download or upload a binary, so essentially a file of any type, and go do extraction. So we're able to extract things from the files and so on. But one thing that you also may have realized right now is that we can pass along different pieces of data when we upload something through our webhook. What does that mean? We may want to pass, for instance, a user ID. We may want to pass other content that we want to pass along the workflow, and many other things. This is what we call metadata, essentially. But why is that important? Well, it's important because eventually what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to, when we hit this webhook, just like we're doing, uploading something, we want to be able to, for instance, pass a unique user ID. Ultimately, we want to be able to get information about the logged in users, because later in the actual application, we want to be able to have users who are authenticated so they can create an account and log in. And so when a user is logged in, we want to track that user, which means each user will have a unique user ID. And so we want to be able to track, to pull that piece of information, such as user ID, and pass that along as we pass the binary, the file that we're uploading, and extract things, and down the line to be able to use that user ID. And the beauty also is, as we go through this process, we can pass content. Imagine that we want to make sure that on top of having the binary file, we want to be able to get to the point, which we'll see, where we combine all of the outputs in a more formal or a better format of these outputs so that we can do things down the line. And so that's what I'm going to show you. And it's an important concept to really think about or to understand, because you will always find yourself in these situations where you need to pass extra pieces of information through your workflow. Okay, let me go ahead and show you how to think and how to do that. What do we want to do? I'm going to click on webhook. So we know this is all working. That's fine. And we can see the output here. It's kind of small, but that's okay, is the PDF file. But then we go one down or up, you can see that we're able to see the data, the file, the binary file, And we're able to extract a few fields. Remember, content type and the file name, just as an example. But what I want to also do here is I want to be able to extract a different field. But what I'm going to do essentially is I'm going to go back to my code and I'm going to ask something. I'm going to say, please show me the payload in JSON format of what is sent to the webhook. So what I'm saying here is that I want this JSON. It's just a format of data that is formatted, that's easy to access programmatically using code. But also, if you go back here, I'm going to show you that JSON, there's a format. So it's just a very nice way of representing data that's easy to access programmatically, and you can actually read and understand. You can see we have key value pairs. We have origin, that is the key, and then this would be the actual value. And so what we're saying here is that we know in code what happens, something is sent to our webhook, and we want to see what are the pieces of data that are sent. We should kind of know, we already know what is sent. All of this is actually sent or received, right, by the webhook or sent to the webhook. And you also know that this is most likely also the body of things that are sent. But I just want to show you how to ask, in this case, Bolt.new, how to get that information. So I'm going to click, and there you go. And this is exactly what I was talking about, right? It goes ahead, just move this there, and tells me exactly JSON format, it goes in data, voila, binary file content, file name, and content type. So it's exactly what I showed you, file name, content type. This is the things that are happening. Now you may say, okay, where is this data part? Well, the data is the actual binary file content. And the way it's represented here is essentially all of this, right? This is the binary that is represented, that is being passed along. So what are we going to do here? I'm going to ask the agent here to add yet another field, okay, so that we see how that would work. So I'm going to say, for instance, add another field called user ID and pass along a dummy ID. I'm going to say this has to be alphanumeric. Add another field called user ID and pass along a dummy ID alphanumeric. So I'm telling it that this ID has to be unique, because later it's going to be an ID that we actually are going to pull from an authorized user. So I'm going to add it there like that. And so now it's writing the code, is updating this upload service to add that. So you can see now we have something like this. Okay. All right. So that means if I come here, I'm going to go back and I'm just going to say execute workflow. So I refresh this to make sure that I connect to the main app. And I'm going to upload something real quick here so you can see it. Doesn't matter what, really. And it should work. However, if you look back here, let's go to the extracted fields. You will see, let's go to JSON. We should see that indeed we have this user ID, right? This is really cool. This tells me, which is wonderful, you can always pass more things along when you upload something so that you can take that information and pull it out next. So essentially, if I go to output here, I'm going to go to schema, or rather, if you go down here, you can see that that user ID is now the output, was input because it came in as a binary file with everything. And now we still have the binary file, but also we have this user ID along with other fields. Okay, so this is pretty powerful, as you will see. All right, very good. So we're able to add yet another field so we can add more metadata. So what I want you to do is to prompt your Bolt.new and see if you can ask it to add yet another field. Whatever it is, you can say content or something just for exercise so you can see how all of that works. So now we have all the pieces together. What we want to do is, we know that the switch will make sure that if we have a PDF file, we're going to call the extract from PDF. We know if we have a CSV file coming in, it's going to go through this, and then otherwise we go to the text file extraction. But what we want to do next is we want to make sure that we have a sort of a combined endpoint here, because we want to be able to get all the pieces that we want from the previous steps, previous nodes, and put it all together here. Now, I'm going to add another node here real quick. This node is going to be code. So you can see you can actually write code in a node that will be able to manipulate data and do all sorts of things that we want. Okay. So I'm going to go back. We have a node that is connected. But I want this node here not only to connect to this, but I want this to connect to that node as well, and this other one to connect to this node. So all these three options are going to connect to this code node. Now I know code, and some of you may be a little bit apprehensive, but it's okay. This is fun. Let's go ahead and tackle this. So what's happening here? Well, the first thing is we can see that we have the input. It's the same thing we've seen before. To the left, we have the input, what's coming in from previous nodes. And then we have the actual settings that we can manipulate and do things. And then obviously we will have the output that goes out on the right-hand side. Okay. And here is the code. So at the top here, we can say the mode that we want this to run. Okay, we have run once for all items or run once for each item. In this case, just one, it's okay. Okay, and we can choose a language, a programming language. They have Python, which they're still working on. That's why it says beta. And we have JavaScript. So we're going to go stick to JavaScript because that's the main programming language. And now we have this place here where we have the code. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave as is and run this and see what will happen. Okay, so we see that the output now, we have the output says metric, value, and my new field. So all of these things are things that perhaps we have no clue, but we know this comes from the CSV file that we extracted on the extract from file 1, which was the name of the node that took care of extracting CSV file. It doesn't matter, but we know these are the things that are extracted. And now we have that output. So that means this code here obviously does just that. It takes everything from the input, put it all together, and returns all, as you can see here. Now, this is a lot. It's okay. We'll dive in. But this is not what we want, even though it works fine. If we go back here, you can see this is what's happening. It works great. But we want our own code. So I'm going to put some pieces of code here and I'm going to go over it so we can understand what's going on. So let's go ahead over and see. I put some notes here so you can actually see. So these are what we call comments, which means these pieces of what's written here, they won't run. That's why everything is grayed out. What is going to be run when we run this is all of these other lines. Okay, so what's happening here? You can see here, I say I'm extracting something and put that into a variable. Let's go ahead and explain exactly this line of code because it's really important and it shows you exactly the basis or the basics fundamentals of what programming is. Let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, let's deconstruct this piece of code here. We see this const user ID and we have all of this stuff. If you're not a programmer, this is, a very obscure thing. Language. It may not make a lot of sense, but the good news is programming languages are based off spoken language, specifically English, right? So you could probably make out what's kind of happening here, but let's go and look at everything so we understand what's going on. So I want you to imagine that you work in an office. So you have the office building and this would be the node. So if you are in this office building and you want to find someone's employee ID, what would you do? So what happens is that you first start from the node. This is the office, the building. And then you go to this department, the specific department, which in this case, you extracting field department. And then once you get to that department, you go to the employee records, right? In this case would be the JSON part of thing. And then once you're there in these records, you go and fetch the user ID. That's exactly what's happening here. Okay. Now, continuing, here's another analogy. So what's happening here is that If we use, for instance, an Amazon analogy, right? They have packages, they send them out. So the first part is that you receive your package. So this would be the node itself. That's the whole package, the whole box. We don't know what's in there. That's fine. But we're going to go in and find out. And inside the package, we have, let's say, a section, or we have a label that says extract fields. So this is this part here to go. So we go into the box package, we go inside into the extract fields. And once we get there, we go in that section that we talked about, and there's also what we call a detailed invoice in that. A detailed invoice, well, as the name implies, it has all the other details of what we're looking for. And that would be the JSON. So we went the main box, we drilled in, we went to the extract fields label section, and then we even went further to the JSON detailed invoice, right? And then on the invoice, the JSON, we want to find the customer ID. That's when we go and say user ID, right? Now, once we have this information, we want to put somewhere. That way, we don't have to always reference this constantly to go and get that piece of data, at least for as the program is running. And so that's why we write that ID on a sticky note as an example. And how you do that, you put that into a little variable, a little placeholder that's going to be holding that in memory, the piece, whatever we received from this piece of code. Okay? That's why we say const user ID. That is how the programming works, the most basics of programming, and that's what we're doing here. All right, so now that we understand at least the most important part of this code, so I also have these notes here. This is where we're extracting something. So notice that this extract field, this is a name of the node that we had previously. So if you go back here, this is the extract field, or rather this one here. This node is what we're referencing there. Now, next we see here, what we want to do is we want to turn each item in the JSON, right, in this formatted piece of data, or the way things are coming in, into what we call a content array. Array is just a data structure, a way that in programming you structure data as it comes in. Because in programming, really what you're doing is you're taking data and work on that data, and then there's an output, which is the same analogy that we have here. We have input, you work on that stuff, and then you have the output. That's exactly what computing in general is. So that's what we're doing here. We don't have to know everything. So we're looping through and creating that content array. So what we want to do is, and so this is no longer available there. I'm going to remove that. So what we're doing here is that we're creating a new JSON, a new well-structured format that will have user ID and the content inside of that. Okay, so it's more of a uniform way of pulling in information and put that into a different format so it's easier for us to work with later on. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So let's go ahead and run this step real quick and see what will happen now. You can see it's going to run the code, and look at this. Now things have changed considerably. You can see this is schema. If I go to JSON, look what happens. We have a different structure. Now look at this. We have content, and then we have the metrics. So the same things that were extracted, now we moved all of that and created a different sort of a structure, JSON structure, that it's easier to work with. Because now we have metric, the same thing, and the value is that. And then we have the same thing, and value is that, and all of the way. And this is great. So now we have something that is totally different from what we started with. So it doesn't matter what we do. If I go back here, I'm going to just add a webhook. I think it's respond to webhook so we can see the whole thing. I'm going to say all incoming, so we just show all of the items. Look at this. So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to just execute this step again. It's going to do that. And if I go here, you will see that I should have JSON exactly as the input, because that was the output from the code, and this is what we get. All right, very good. So this is really awesome because we can do all sorts of things with our data. Okay, let's go ahead and do a full-on upload here just to see how all this will work, to see the end result. So I'm going to say execute again and go to my file uploader. I'm going to refresh because that's a good idea all the time to connect to our application. I could have also used it here. same thing, but I like it here. And the way you get to that, you just say click here on open preview in a separate tab, and you should say something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and upload something again, doesn't matter what, and I'm going to upload that. It should give me a green if all goes well. Oh, not yet. Upload. Okay, so we have some issues. A problem in Node webhook, not properly. Let me go ahead and click this. Okay, so that means, make this smaller. So what that means is that webhook node not correctly configured. That's because I need to change this to using webhook, respond to webhook node. Why? Because I've added at the end here this respond to webhook. So that's something to always keep in mind. And usually it tells you exactly what the problem is. All right? Okay, let's save and run again. And upload. Yeah, sometimes I have to refresh this. Okay, let's start again. Okay, so upload went all in, and you can see because it was in a PDF file, it went through the proper channels, as you see there. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the extract. You can see, very good. We have the JSON, all of that, and we have user ID, right? And then went through, and now we can see that we have, make this smaller. So you can see the output is going to be all of that, and we extracted the text from our PDF, and this is other metadata because of PDF, and the PDF extractor extracts other pieces of information about that PDF file, okay? And all that information, and fine, but we don't see in our output here, in our code, the field which is the user ID. But we know it's coming in because if we go to extract fields node, can go all the way down, you can see that indeed we are passing that through. And the problem here is very easy to spot because that means when we say node extract fields, this is not working. It's not giving an error, but it's not getting the information. And one of the things you want to do is when things like that happen, what you want to do is you can actually come here and just pull that like this. So this is actually going to write the code for you, the correct deciphering of the correct pieces that you need to go through, as I gave you the example earlier on how to start from your box or your package, and you go in, finding voice and details and everything. Because it has to go through all these pieces. This is actually JSON, but in a schema format, to go through body or JSON body and then go in and get that piece of information. So that means then if you look at the difference here, the difference here is that we have user ID. We say node, go to extract field, JSON user ID. But this is a little bit different. It goes to extract fields, which is exactly the same one we have here. But instead of straight to JSON, it goes to first, and then go to JSON, and then go to body, and then gets to user ID. So let's see what I'm going to do now. I'm going to copy, because this is our sticky note. And I'm going to go like this. And what I'm going to do for now, you can say command / or just put 2 / like this, and this will comment this out, which means this code is not going to run. So now I can actually execute this step and see what's going to happen. Because again, I'm going to make sure you can see that we have content, all this metadata, but we don't have the user ID anywhere to be found, which should look like this, as you see right here. All right, so let's go ahead and execute this, and hopefully we can see, we'll find, and voila, you can see that now we're able to get the actual user ID. So why am I showing all of this? I could have edited all of that out, but I wanted to show you exactly how to troubleshoot things as you continue working on your workflows, right? So I hope this is helpful. What we did here, it's very important. Make sure to actually get the correct pieces through pulling in the code, and as I showed you here, so that you can see how to access the user ID. And this is the way you do in this case. So in the previous example that I was working on, this would have worked, but other things happened there. So now this is what we have. And so you can see that we have user ID at the top, and then we have content, and anywhere we go, we're going to get that user ID, which was passed through from the webhook. So you saw the whole process of how to think about vibe coding and how to really start leveraging this tool, whether you are a developer or a non-developer, person who knows code and a person who doesn't know code. So I took you through the whole process of how to rethink about what you need to understand in this age of AI and vibe coding and being able to actually build applications, knowing to code or not knowing to code through vibe coding. And we also looked at how to implement or leverage the automation tool here that we use, N8N, to build a backend and use vibe coding to actually interact with these two. So this is how I think you need to start thinking on how to use tools to your advantage. Again, whether you're a developer, software engineer, or not. It's all about tooling. It's all about learning the pieces that you need to learn to actually be able to communicate with these AI tools so that you can actually vibe code well and build applications. But it's all about the language, the lingo that you need to master. So this is what I wanted to show you. Again, if you want to get a deeper view on understanding vibe coding using N8N or any other automation tools, go ahead and join the AI Foundations community, which I'm privileged to be part of the team, help members to actually build amazing applications using AI. So there's a lot there, a vibrant community with amazing people, amazing connections, courses, and calls. And one of the calls that I lead is all on vibe coding, where I teach people how to really think about vibe coding, whether you're a beginner, non-coder, coder, it doesn't matter. Okay, so thank you so much. If you like this video, go ahead and comment and click the link in the description to join AI Foundation community. And I can't wait to see you there.